Welcome to Bob Larson Live. Tonight, the recent revival at Kentucky's Asbury University was initially hyped as the hope for renewed spiritual interest for today's young people. After 10 days of nonstop praying in public, it has ended. The Asbury Revival. Was it for real? We're going to be paying close attention to your chat tonight. I don't have a guest. I decided this topic was so important because so many people have been asking me about it that we just devote a whole evening to it. I've got an extended commentary and teaching on this subject. I'm going to be telling you some things about my view of revival and my view of what happened at Asbury that you're probably not going to see anywhere else or hear anywhere else. But then you expect that from me. I've not been there to see what's happening. Don't really need to. It's all over the internet. It's been well covered by pundits of every shape and variety. But I want to know what you think. Starting things off tonight, though, thank you, Diane, for that gift of $49.99. You're such a dear friend of this ministry, and we're very, very, very grateful for you. And Murray for life, member 2 years of Members Only channel. Blessings from Texas. By the way, speaking of blessings from Texas, if you are a member of the Members Only channel, we're about ready to go into another month. But as of right now, at the sword bearer level, for just $3.99 a month, you have access to 64 videos. At the soldier level, for just $7.99 a month, 110. At the commander level, 180. Wow. And that's going to go up to 186 in just a few days. So make sure that you join the Members Only channel. And Adrian, good to hear from you, our man in Dallas. He's been a member for 2 years. Fairy Girl says it would be nice if you posted more testimonials. Yeah, that's a great idea, but I'm telling you, I have so many testimonials, we wouldn't know where to start. Yeah, most of you don't understand what my day is like, but I spend an average day anywhere from 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 personal, virtual, or in-person sessions with people. And I do that a minimum of 4 to 5, sometimes 6, sometimes 7 days a week. I don't even have time to gather these testimonials. My staff is so busy getting on to the next thing. We don't. It'd be great because they're amazing things that happen. That's a great idea. Thank you so much for that. Kate, hi from Canada. Where from Canada? I'd like to know where you're from. Zilko, I watch scary movies in detail. Why do you want to do that? That's a bad idea. And I cannot find them on the internet, and nobody knows anything about these movies because this being illness. I don't know, but you've got something really strange going on, sir, and you need to stop it immediately. Scott, member 6 months of the Members Only channel, watching from Oklahoma City. Craig Wood, I heard that Rick Warren was involved. In the Asbury Revival? No, I don't think that's true. I don't know anything about that at all. Diane, again, who just gave the $49.99, said it's an honor to give this ministry. Thank you. Freya, hi, Bob. Joe, I just talked to you in a virtual encounter. Great. Greetings from Chicago, Reverend Larson. Him Gathering, hi Bob from Brisbane, Australia. They're in the beautiful Gold Coast, one of the most beautiful spots in the world and the greatest surfers on the planet. I'm telling you, in that area, looking at those guys on those waves, it's like nothing you see anywhere else in the world, I gotta tell you. And Noel, hello from South Carolina. Felicia says, I just started your School of Exorcism at Bob Larson University. I hope to meet you in person in the future. Thank you for all you do. I am from Eustis, Texas. I have heard of Eustis. Actually, when we were on the radio, I used to get callers from Eustis all the time, but I don't know exactly where it is. Joshua, hi, Pastor Bob, from Joshua and Elma in Colorado. And Freya, Bob, can you tell me about the Vikings? Well, that's an interesting question with your name. I would be really interested to know where you got the name for you. You got the exact spelling. You must have Nordic in your background. Somebody did not know that Freya was one of the principal gods. It is the Jezebel spirit of the Nordic pantheon. You know, Odin and Thor and Loki and Fenrir and Freya. Well, Freya is the female goddess. I'm not saying that's necessarily a curse to have that name, but you might want to pray over it, all right? Gunka Zone, hi, Bob. Any words on PTSD? There's a lot I can say about post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm 14, and my dad is retired after a 20-year-long police career. My dad's a great man of God. Now, what's some advice and prayers? Well, maybe he's got PTSD. I'm not sure you would have it at 14, but he might have it. And if he does have it, I'm not at all surprised if he's serving in the police force, especially in these days. There's so much to say about that, but it is a very real, legitimate psychological disorder that comes from stress, and it can be the result of a single incident or multiple incidents of trauma or situations that are very difficult to mentally and emotionally process as the result of frightening things, scary things, as I said, traumatic things that a person may have experienced. And usually an individual like that needs a trained therapist to help them. Of course, inner healing, the work of the Holy Spirit, can do part of that work. But a lot of it has to do with knowing how to talk about it and process it. A lot of the young men and women coming back from the Middle East, particularly places like Afghanistan and so on, where they have seen friends blown up before their eyes or experienced being shot at or being in strained times of war. So they experience, and I've worked with a lot of those. It's a very real situation, and my prayers are with you if it is your father. Hala, thought it was in New Jersey. I don't know what that means. Very good. Pastor Bob, can you a whole live show and testimonials of people? I think we got to that too. Dan says, hi, Bob. How do you get a virtual encounter? You just go to boblarson.org on the website, and it'll lead you to a place where you can enroll in one, or you can call our phone number. We can put that up on the screen, 303-980-1511. That's the phone number of our office. Well, some great chats tonight. Fair girl, I mean people you have helped. I'm not sure what that refers back to because I'm moving so quickly here. Monica, hi, Pastor Bob. How can my 2-year-old go through deliverance? What makes you want to take your 2-year-old through deliverance? Now, you could pray over your 2-year-old, if that's what you need to do. You need to pray over your child, breaking any curses, particularly the curses that you would have passed on. A child can't acquire a curse because they don't have the moral capacity or cognitive understanding to make a moral choice that would cause them to be a victim of a curse. But they could inherit your curses, so you pray over them because you have authority over the child. But the child doesn't need to go through deliverance. Jackie, this is Kathy from Toronto, Canada. Great city, beautiful. Some years ago, 7, 8 years ago, I was there for some personal encounter sessions with people. My wife and I took fortunately it was in June, late June, beautiful weather, took a boat, a little tour out there into the harbor, and looking back on that skyline of Toronto, it's really a very beautiful place. Living Word, Turlock, greetings from the city of Turlock in California. Dan, hi, Bob. How do you get a virtual encounter? I think I got to that already. Bob, have you gone through deliverance? Well, I've had some of the mature people in the Lord who have helped to stand by me through the years, pray over me, but no, I've never manifested a demon, all right? Adrian, this is Craig. We talked about Adrian a moment ago. Craig, I've been a listener since the 80s. I guess you must go back to Talk Back with Bob Larson, that 20-year span that I was on the radio. Never missed Talk back in the day, and I have many of your books. You've been a great inspiration. Wow, thanks. Gunka Zone, thank you so much. You almost brought tears to my eyes. God bless you and your ministry. I'm going to get to more of those chats in a moment. Just a couple of quick things here. Monday, I've got a very interesting blog and vlog coming out. called Dark Room Demons, one of the newest New Age fads. Newest new? That's a bit of a contradiction. One of the newest New Age, there we go, fads, and it's sweeping the country. Aaron Rodgers, the NFL MVP 3 times, is right now on a retreat, figuring out who he's going to play for next year. And he's going to sequester himself for 4 days in a dark room, no lights, little food, one bathroom if he can find it. And who knows what he's going to be smoking. He's the ayahuasca man, you know. This is a very dangerous thing that people are getting into, darkroom meditation retreats. And I've got a blog coming out on a Monday, so I want you to be watching for that. Also, Baltimore, April the 28th, going to see my friends at New Life Sanctuary. And in Denver, Colorado, going to be there one day for encounters on June the 30th. By the way, would you like and share right now? Because I'm going to be talking about the whole subject of the Asbury Revival. And I'm going to be saying some things you probably haven't heard elsewhere. So I really would encourage you to share this with somebody and also to like, because obviously it helps us with the algorithms with YouTube. And subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you are not a regular subscriber, there are certain times when we do things on the spur of the moment, or we make changes in topics or changes in what we're going to be doing with our shorts or with our live video blogs and that sort of thing. But you will be the first to know if you have subscribed. So hit that notification bell. And please remember, your support of this ministry is crucial, because that's how we make possible not only Bob Larson Live, but Bob Larson University and all the other aspects of ministry that we're involved in through social media. If you would right now perfectly consider a gift and go to boblarson.org and click and donate, or if you do like using your cell phone, just pick up that cell phone and text GIVE to 833-361-4711. You will help us to continue doing what we're doing. Now, the thing you could do is to get one of our books. And just before I went on the air, I walked in the studio and I have a stack of some of our books here. And I don't talk about them very often. You can go to the website and look at them. But many of you are new to this ministry or not aware of some of the things we have to offer. Our book, Demon Proofing Prayers, is a classic of what you need to pray to declare your relationship with Christ and how you defend yourself against the devil. That's what we call it, demon-proofing prayers. And some people just don't know how to pray. They don't know how to get started to speak in an authoritative way God's blessing over their lives, as well as their opposition to evil, the breaking of curses. This is a good place to get started. And then, of course, our book on the subject of curse breaking. If you haven't gone through detailed, extensive curse breaking, there are 25 pages in the back of this where we lead you through scores and scores and scores of different types of curse breaking prayers of things that you probably never even thought about as being curses. And then our book, Jezebel, the number one spiritual enemy. That's what we call it. That's the subtitle. You need to know about this spirit. It's the dominant spirit of our age. The best way to understand this ministry and its approach to the topic of deliverance and exorcism is to obviously enroll in Bob Larson University. But one of the other things you can do is get our book, Dealing with Demons. And this helps you to really get inside my head and understand how I do what I do, why I do what I do, and over 5 decades what the Lord has taught me to, as much as possible, perfect the process of deliverance so that it's not random, so it's not scattershot. It's not just a bunch of screaming and yelling and people falling on the floor and writhing and saying out in the name of Jesus. There's much more to it than that if it's done right. And this explains how to do that. Set your family free. My wife Laura and I wrote this book. I wrote half of it. She wrote the other half. It's a book about getting delivered in your marriage and the practical things you can do to set things right. And there are many other books that we have. They list them all there at boblarson.org, and I encourage you to do that. And remember, It's your standing with us that allows us to do what we do. Tonight, we talk about the subject of the Asbury Revival. But if you have not yet enrolled in Bob Larson University, I encourage you to do so. It consists of 5 departments, each with a particular educational emphasis. The top level is the Seminary of Spiritual Warfare, which is currently in the process of being developed. The next step down is the Institute of Supernatural Studies. That's not yet available in video, though we've already started filming it. The third level is the College of Apologetics and Demonology. We already have that available. It's brand new. It's the latest edition. And let me just list off for you some of the topics. The 10 courses. Introduction to Apologetics. We teach you what apologetics is, how to apologetically present the gospel. An introduction to demonology, the basics of demonology that most people don't know. Cultural demonic portals like ghosts, UFOs, and the paranormal. The 4th course is an apologetic response to cultic religious syncretism, which means the melding together of various religious systems, and we see that very much in our world today, particularly through the New Age. We teach you how to respond to people who are involved in that sort of thing. The 5th course is about anthropology and demonology. Well, Bob, why would I want to know about that? I'll tell you why. Because it gives you a template to understand from a cultural and sociological perspective how people view evil, how people view demons. And the more you know about where their heads are, where their mindset is, the better you can respond to them. And then I really like the 6th course in the College of Apologetics and Demonology. And that is an apologetic response to humanistic psychology. This is the dominant world view in most people's minds today, and they don't even understand that it is. You know, they toss around words like, oh, the conscious or the subconscious or the id or the ego or the whatever. And they don't understand there was a world that existed before Freud came along and that was developed, and how that has taken over the thinking of so many people today. The 7th course is apologetic response to the denial of Christians being cursed. How do you really stand up and biblically prove Christians need to break curses? Course number 8. Apologetic defense of supernatural Christianity. Is Christianity supernatural? How to apologetically defend that. 9th course is the origin and the nature of evil. You may just say, well, Satan fell from heaven. I know that. He got kicked out and rebelled. 1/3 of the angels of heaven came with him. But it's much deeper than that. And the final of the 10 course is a demonological structure of the spirit world. So I take the spirit world and I break it down, showing you how the kingdom of darkness operates. So that's in the 3rd department. So I said there's the seminary at the top, then the Institute of Supernatural Studies, which we're working on right now, and we're already filming it. Part of it's written. The College of Apologetics and Demonology was just recently released. And then, of course, there's the Advanced Academy of Deliverance, and then the initial department, the International School of Exorcism, which is the basics of deliverance. Just before I get into my monologue, and we take some more chats on this subject of Asbury, and I'm interested in getting some chats on that topic. Let me give you just a quick look. Here is a sample. Now, this is from course number 5 of the College of Apologetics and Demonology on the subject of human sacrifice. So here's a sample of the teaching regarding the ancient spiritual practice of human sacrifice. Hey, this is live, folks. We played the wrong spot there. This one has to do with another one of the departments and another one of the courses. But anyway, you get the idea. So get down there right now and enroll at Bob Larson University. Would you do that? All right. On to Asbury. A couple of chats first. Stephen, thank you, Bob, for your teaching. Justin, would love it if you came to Pittsburgh. I did come to Pittsburgh many years ago. I haven't been back there for a while. Phyllis, please visit Myrtle Beach. I'd like to take a vacation at Myrtle Beach. Chronicles of an Exorcist by Eva. God bless you. Member of the Members Only channel for 2 years. A wonderful dear friend of this ministry that I've taken through several deliverances. And my good friends at Mushroom Ministries back in Pennsylvania. Tom and Margaret Bleston's Justin's happy anniversary. First person who said happy anniversary to my wife and I. And this Monday, just a couple of days ago, we celebrated our 30th anniversary. 3 wonderful children who are serving the Lord, and that's what it's all about. Kelly, there was my little boy, loved Thunder, the Barbarian. Oh, so much. It's something to do with the Vikings. And, I see where I lost this here. Something to do with the Vikings and scary, blonde-headed, brawny men. My 20-year-old looks like one. Well, I don't know, but you might want to break some serious curses there. Holla! Bob, do you think you'll be returning to Minnesota? Not in the winter, but perhaps in the summer. Been there many times. Went to see you a few years ago when you had a meeting in Bloomington near the Mall of America. Of course, you cast a demon out of the guy who was Indian. That's right. Kelly, I like the way you abound evil spirits. Diane, we need more revivals. David, I stand with you, Bob. As a priest of God, I approve what you do. Keep up the good work. What great comments tonight. Tim, I would highly recommend going through the school. Thank you so much. Davidson, pray for my right hand. My back is numb. An attack of witchcraft. All right, so what we do when somebody asks for prayer is I can't stop to do it, or that's all I'd be doing all night and would never get around to the teaching. So I just encourage my friends to pray. Jackie, you don't kill demons or anything. You send them back to the pit. Jesus never killed demons. Of course not. I don't know where you got that one. Jeffrey, I was heavy into Led Zeppelin. I know their one album was dedicated to Druidism. Well, Jimmy Page was deep into witchcraft. In fact, he bought one of the homes that the famed Satanist Aleister Crowley had lived in. He bought it specifically because there were spirits in the house and he knew it. He's a very, very dangerous man. In fact, I did a blog, maybe a year ago on Jimmy Page and where he's at today and how that whole thing played out with Led Zeppelin. You might want to go to our website, boblarson.org, and go to the blog section. And there you can do a word search and just put in Jimmy Page and it'll come up, all right? I'm going to go more to these chats in a moment, but I want to get on to talk about the topic of tonight. There are a few people today who actually remember revivalism. Because what's going on at Asbury is very similar to what happened in 1970. Now, I'm old enough to recall that. It was very similar to the latest iteration. There was spontaneous prayer, all-night vigils of spiritual fervor, huge crowds. Most of you weren't even born in 1970, let alone remember it. But then what happened? Most people don't remember it. The majority of you don't even know this same thing happened 5 decades ago. And frankly, it doesn't seem to have had much impact on broader cultural mores and beliefs. Now, that's not to say that what happened 50 years ago is not without significance. Look, any time a life is touched by God's presence through prayer, that's an occurrence to be cherished. But I think we need some perspective, and I've seen very little perspective. I've seen a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of rah-rah about what God is doing, but not a lot of incisiveness about what's happening or has been happening in Asbury. Now, this is just one of many revivals, and we're going to talk more about that in a moment. Is there a Christian who hasn't heard about it? So let's put it into context. Asbury University in Wilmore, Kentucky. Population 6,000. And 3, 4, 5, or 6 times as many people, they lost count, from around the world have descended on Asbury. One credible source says there were about 60,000 people. 60,000 people from around the world to witness the spiritual fervor of students who've experienced some type of an awakening. Started a couple of weeks ago. Several luminaries of evangelical Christendom have shown up. I don't know why they were there. Curious? Maybe wanting to exploit what was happening for personal reasons. I'm going to leave it to God to judge what their motives were. Well, eventually, the lack of food, lodging, and bathrooms. They had a real bathroom problem. People were lining up for blocks to get into the bathroom. It caught up with the revivalistic fervor, and the president of Asbury was forced to close down the nonstop gatherings. The president issued a well-worded statement. I read it in full. And his reaction was gracious, and it was serious. And he pointed out that midterms were due, and the students needed to get back to the business of education and let the revival fires continue to burn somewhere else. I like that approach. I'm glad he handled it that way, because this thing could have gone on forever, and what they paid for, which was an education, most of them, or some of them, would never have gotten. So like I said a moment ago, anytime a life is touched by the Lord, and it happens through prayer, we need to rejoice in that. Of course we do. But again, perspective. What is the perspective we need on Asbury, past and present? Now, this is one in a series of notable revival breakouts. Historically, of course, in the early part of the 20th century, there was the Welsh Revival. Earlier, there were the spiritual awakenings of George Whitefield, John Wesley, and then the Jesus movement, coming from the 60s countercultural culture. And let's not forget the Toronto Awakening, the Brownsville Revival, the Lakeland Revival, etc., etc. That one was led by the eventually disgraced Todd Bentley. That was sad. All of these brought various benefits and a lot of theological quandaries. Now we have Asbury. The institutions of Asbury, for those of you who don't know, include a university, a Christian college, so to speak, and a seminary, and they're literally across the street from each other. Asbury University is private, it's Christian, and the college is aligned with the Wesleyan Holiness Movement. Now, most of you have no clue what the Wesleyan Holiness Movement is, and I don't blame you because you don't hear much about it. It's a fairly small group of evangelical Christians. But this college was established in 1890 by John Wesley, named himself after John Wesley Hughes, and it was originally called the Kentucky Holiness College. But it was later renamed after Bishop Francis Asbury, the father of American Methodism and a circuit riding evangelist. Do you even know what a circuit riding evangelist is? We seldom hear that term today, but these are the guys who on horseback would just go around one community to another, preaching, stirring up revival wherever they went. And this guy was obviously a great man of God, and he did that. It was a missionary effort in early American life, particularly in the 19th century. So let's put this revival in more context. to understand what went on there, theology is important. So many people just look at it and say, was this wonderful? People praise the Lord. They're praying for one another and they're, involved in this spiritual fervor. But what's the theological context of what's happening? Who are the holiness Wesleyans? Who were they? Well, it all started out with John and Charles Wesley. Now, most of you, John Wesley is the founder of Methodism, but he had a brother Charles, and they were students in England at Oxford University in the mid-18th century. Well, they saw there was some apostasy in the Anglican Church. It wasn't what it started out to be. It had gone a little formal and cold, and so they decided we're going to be real Bible-believing Christians. So the Wesley brothers went back to their origins of original sin and the basics of the Bible. But they also rejected the Calvinist doctrine of election, predestination, and irresistible grace. Not exactly a tulip 5-point Calvinism, but 3 of the 5. They adopted a doctrine of what is known as prevenient grace. And what that means theologically is grace from God which doesn't violate moral freedom. It is sort of in between Calvinism and Arminianism. In other words, man has the possibility of choosing, but God also divinely offers his grace. So it's that middle ground between a predestined Calvinist view and an extreme Arminian view. But what the Wesleyans were famous for is the debate over sanctification. If you don't know what that word means, it just simply means a purifying of oneself to be of service to God and to be pleasing unto the Lord. But here's what they debated. Was sanctification a second work of grace, or is sanctification progressive? And there have been a lot of theological arguments over that. In other words, the closeness that you have to the Lord, the deepness that you have with Christ, is that a situation that you arrive at by the immediacy of an experience, or is it progressive over time? Now, Pentecostals tend to kind of bridge both gaps with the belief in a baptizing experience, which is immediate, but also a sanctification process which is progressive. So the Wesleyan tradition took a little bit different take on that and said that there is a second experience beyond salvation whereby one becomes sanctified. Basically, they said it was both. It was progressive, but it also could be instantaneous. And there's a lot of jokes about Nazarenes who came out of that, as well as Wesleyans about, you're sanctified, so now you're okay. You don't need to worry. You're never going to sin again. And that was the extreme part of that teaching. Now, that's part of the Wesleyan holiness movement that traces back to Asbury that nobody seems to want to talk about. But it's that inbred idea in the thinking of the people at Asbury, not all of them, of course, but many of the students were raised in that tradition, that was, I believe, the foundation for these revivalistic situations. In fact, this is the 8th time that this has happened at Asbury. So this is a periodic thing that happens whereby the student body has this sense of needing to get close to the Lord, and there's this energized fervor that takes place. So this is not a unique thing. It has happened before several times. So as time progressed, this debate over instant versus progressive sanctification went on. And finally, it was basically decided, again, this is a broad blanket statement. It does apply to every single person involved in the holiness movement or the Wesleyan movement. The sanctification was some kind of second distinctive work of grace. a little bit short of what Pentecostals came to believe was a work known as the baptism of the Holy Spirit. So the Wesleyans stopped short of speaking in tongues and the prophetic and all these other things that are identified with Pentecostals and Charismatics, but they did believe there needed to be, beyond salvation, another energizing experience where you drew closer to the Lord and deeper in God, and you became sanctified. And they modified that doctrine somewhat, but that's the basic foundation of it. Why is that important? Well, if you understand the mindset of the thinking of how many of these students were raised and what that tradition was, then they are seeking that experience. Now, some of them are just wanting to get close to the Lord, of course, and I'm painting with a broad brushstroke here, but I do believe it's crucial that we understand this. And many of them probably don't even know what Wesleyan doctrine is. They were just raised in it, and some of them, of course, came from other traditions and went to a Wesleyan school, which didn't mean that they were Wesleyan. But the core group of the student body, of course, came from that belief structure. So this is what they were seeking: a deeper, sanctified experience with God. That's not a bad thing. I'm not suggesting that it is. I'm just saying that's the spiritual theological template that allowed this revivalistic fervor to come alive. A lot more I want to say here. Hold on a minute, because I want to get to some chats. Stephen, remember the members only channel a year? I've recommended both the International School of Exorcism and the Advanced Academy of Deliverance of Bob Larson University. Highly recommended. Thank you so much, Stephen. Jeffrey, Bob, have you heard about the exorcism files being played on iHeartRadio? No, actually, I haven't. Kind of shocking that they are reenacting real-life experienced exorcisms. Well, I find that interesting. Got to check that out. Sunrise on the Sea. Whoops, a minute, I lost you there. Sunrise on the Sea. The great revivals were all spawned out of prayer meetings. More or less. The established order and rules for those prayer meetings and exploded into hundreds of thousands being saved. Well, in many cases, that did happen. Silver Hunter, only God can make a revival happen, so we don't know when and where his spirit will move. Yes, I believe that. Miguel, Bob, can you interview Randy Clark? Yeah, maybe I'll have him on sometime. I actually thought of it and talk about their Global Awakening organization. God used Randy to start the Toronto Blessing. Okay, good advice. David, God will bless you when you give to the poor. I'm not sure where that comes into this, but Jeffrey again says, we need revival. Yes, we absolutely need revival. The question is, what do we mean by that? But I'll have more to say about that in a moment. Graham, hey, Bob, I felt a lot better since my deliverance with you. Okay. What do you think about the new apostolic reformation? Oh, that is a very big topic. And I think there are dangers to it, serious dangers, but I also think there's a lot of very positive things about it. Chalon, pray for my family. All right, here's a prayer request for this prayer family out there. My 18-year-old son is making some very bad choices. Pastor, pray. We're going to get a lot of people praying right now. Here's an interesting handle, ancient history. Bob, the Catholics say they use specific relics when they perform exorcisms. What do you think? Oh boy. The issue of relics is a matter of faith. And I have been to many of the famous churches all over Europe, in a half dozen or more countries, and most of them tend to have some type of relic, whether it's a nail or a splinter from the cross or something that supposedly came from the crown of thorns or whatever. And how do you know? Well, it's a tradition that has been passed down, and supposedly there is authenticity with regards to it because it has been validated over again, generation after generation. But the fact is, there's a whole bunch of holy chalices and a whole bunch of splinters from the cross, and I think if all of them were gathered together from all the churches of the world, we'd have one very big cross. And that's not to be cynical, that's just to say I don't think all of them are legitimate, but some may be. I was in one particular church. I can't remember where it was right now. I believe it might have been Rome, where they're supposedly have the shackles that bound Peter when he was in chains in Rome. Could be, could not be. Who knows? Eva says, I love how the Lord chose a small town in Kentucky. It sort of reminds me of what they said of Jesus. Could anything come out of Nazareth? Was kind of a backwater town in those days in Palestine. Who knows? So let me just pick up on what I said a moment ago. Understanding all of this is very important. The theology of it. So whatever the outsiders who were there were experiencing, the core audience of Asbury was likely, at least subconsciously, inherently seeking a second work of grace, a sanctifying experience to be more totally worthy to God. And that may not have been their expressed purpose, but it was an underlying template. That brings us to the issue of, well, should that matter? Maybe not. Because the Lord receives worship from those who seek him sincerely. Remember when the Pharisees were so upset at the tumult of the crowds following Jesus? And they told Jesus, shut up these people, stop them from giving the praise. And Jesus said, I tell you, if these keep silent, the stones will immediately cry out. Luke 19, 39 to 40. So there is something to be said about these young people crying out to God. Whatever the theological underpinnings were, whatever the context was, they were crying out to God. And in today's sex-obsessed, Satan-obsessed society, of course that's a good thing. So having said all of this, just be aware that the spiritual seeking of the Asbury students likely came from a specific doctrinal context, probably flavored with some social media Pentecostal fervor. So as for any of my Baptist friends looking on, you're going to be a little uncomfortable with the Wesleyan tradition of never really knowing for certain that you're saved and secure in that state. And I think there's probably a certain subliminal amount of that was driving their intentionality. But is that the sum of what was happening? And then this is the big question. Was it a real revival? Well, what is a real revival? Definitionally, revival is a state of seeking a reawakening of religious zeal. But the zeal had to be there in the first place to be reawakened. And that reawakening is usually sought after with a series of emotionally intense meetings. That's the way it's happened throughout history, like at Asbury. Now, to others, revival is just a restoration. So it's not an awakening, it's a restoration to a spiritual place that somehow got lost along the way. They had it, and they lost it, now they're going back to it. That describes what happened at Asbury. It usually is seen as a reawakening from spiritual stagnation. But what is the goal of such a revival? Is it evangelism? Is it social justice? The expression of spiritual gifts? Renewed devotion? Confession and repentance of sin? Well, probably all of these in various measures. Eva again. I keep hearing from you, but I always love to hear from you. I'm praying for revival so people get saved. Tomorrow is not promised. I think, Eva, that's the best way to look at revival. Not the spiritually, emotionally intensive experiences that people go through, though I don't invalidate that, but does it produce souls coming to Christ? And Jeffrey says, yes, people getting saved. But as Christians, we need a stronger union. There's too much competition. I'll buy that. Too much comfort loving and not paying attention to what the enemy is doing. Right on, my brother. Dancing in spirit for his glory. Is that dancing? I think. Well, it can't be Danzig. That's the name of the port city in Denmark. Also was the name of a satanic metal band way back when. But anyway, I don't think that's what this person is. It says, oh, I lost that. Oh, yeah, sadly, the Viking religion is coming back in a big way. My son is into it. They like to fight and they wear a hammer. Well, straighten out your son. Take away Thor's hammer. Don't let them identify with that ideology. Michelle, hey, good to see you. Still down in Houston? Member of the Members Only channel for 2 years. Yes, relics are a matter of faith. I've experienced the Lord's presence at a relic exposition by Father Carlos, a Catholic exorcist. Very interesting. And she's raised a Catholic, a devout Catholic. Has been through our School of Exorcism, our Advanced Academy of Deliverance, and has a wonderful ministry of her own. And I think we all need to be very careful about just saying, well, something is not of God, particularly when there is a long tradition. Now, tradition can be an embedded way of keeping the faithful faithful. But sometimes there's legitimacy to it that these come-lately Christians, particularly that have grown out of movements of the 20th century and the mid-18th century, forget the importance of some of those traditions and the beliefs that got people where we were. Dana, the Cane Ridge Revival, the second Great Awakening, took place then 50 miles away. Well, that's interesting. Stephen, today is Ash Wednesday. I did not get sprinkled with ashes. Should I have? That's a matter of personal choice. If you're part of a liturgical community, you may do that. I am not, and so I haven't. But I would not certainly be opposed to somebody using that as an expression of piety. Susan, great to hear from you, one of the dear friends of this ministry. Please pray for Rebecca. That's her daughter. She is having a great health struggle at this time. And boy, if there's anybody you want to remember in prayer, just remember the name Rebecca. Wonderful, beautiful Christian young woman. Her and her husband were just recently here at our ministry visiting us, and we had an opportunity to pray with them, but she's going through some serious health struggles. And I'm glad you brought this to my attention, Susan, so I can remind this huge prayer family to pray for her. The word revival, most people probably don't know it's not even in the Bible. But the Bible, the scripture, does speak of being revived, like in Psalm 85. Well, what's the upside and the downside of Asbury? Well, here's the danger. Using what happened, now listen to me carefully, using what happened at Asbury to weaponize an attack on anyone who sees it as something less than a true revival. I think I need to repeat that. I'm not sure the full import of that has landed. Let's be careful we don't, and some of you out there, don't use Asbury to weaponize an attack on anyone who doesn't see it as a true revival. In other words, if you don't believe that Asbury was all that it was said to be, something's wrong with you. No, that's not true. Let's not do that. And what I've tried to do tonight is just put this thing on balance. Perhaps it wasn't a planned event. Apparently it wasn't. But it was hyped. Come on, let's be honest. It was hyped. It was hyped by everybody from Tucker Carlson to enemies of the faith. But many also saw it as a sign of spiritual resurgence in America. Like I said earlier, let's remember something. This is one of 8 revivals that Asbury's experienced. So there's a tradition there, and I'm not saying that's bad. That may well be good. Plus, the seminary and the university, let's be honest, are also known for something less than a clear presentation of what it means to be saved. At least that's what some people think. Some would look at this and say, charismatic chaos. Well, it's not charismatic. It has flavors of the template of the charismatic movement and Pentecostals in general, but these people are not Pentecostals. Remember, they're seeking a second work of grace. Some may speak in tongues, but they're not seeking that directly, so it's very different. At best, it could be seen as another marker of spiritual awakening for this generation. So what do I really think? Well, anytime you can get a group of college students together to seek God, amen. I'm going to applaud that. That's a good thing in the world in which we live today. And even though I'm trying to give some balance to this and let you see the bigger picture of what went on, if we say, well, what's the most significant thing about this? People praying. Young men and women, not out smoking weed, clubbing, but their arms around each other. Some of them crying. Some of them in deep states of devotion, serving the Lord. But do these events have to take on a larger significance just because the secular and Christian media takes notice? Let me repeat that. This is the tendency we have in America. We take something often which is a genuine work of God, and we then try to make it into something. We institutionalize it. We give it a significance it doesn't have. We don't let it just be what it is. Michelle, thank you for the gift of $10. Craig says, I was just thinking it'd be good if you arranged an interview with Zena LeVay. I have done an interview with her. I know her personally. I remember the one you did years ago. Yeah, I'd like to revisit that again, but she's kind of dropped off the radar. And I understand her son apparently recently committed suicide. And this young man, who is her son, the grandson of Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, came to see me in a seminar some years ago out in California. And he came there because he said, I heard about you all the time from my grandfather, Anton LaVey. And he said, I just decided to come for myself and see who you really were. And I had a great chance to pray with him and talk with him. I would hope that encounter did something to turn him to Christ and away from the evil in which he was raised. I have a few comments. Don't go anywhere. Let's see here. Craig, I think we got that. Stand up or sit down. I like that. Well, it's happening. Silver Hunter says, I think Christians are so hungry for a move of God that they really hope this would last much longer and was more powerful. Yeah, I think that's a very good way to put it. So what do I really think? As I said, let's not take something like this and give it a larger significance that it doesn't have. Let's let it be what it was. Spontaneous, apparently, outpouring of devotion and spiritual hunger by a group of fine young men and women at a Christian college, turning somewhat routine chapel time into something much more. I decry a lot of the commercialization of this and the hyping of it. But all the preachers around the country got to get to Asbury, got to be there, they got to see themselves taking pictures with their cell phones and so on. I find that very distasteful. Why do you have to make yourself the center of it? Let's keep Jesus at the center of it and just let it be what it was. Now, if that offends somebody, I don't apologize. And I think that's the lesson we need to learn. Let it be what it was or what it's going to be. It's interesting. Shouldn't piety and devotion be common for Christians? Why should this be so extraordinary? Maybe the Asbury phenomenon has a lesson which has been missed in all of the hoopla. What took place there should be normal Christianity. And in fact, you get outside of the United States, it is normal in many parts of the world. You do see that kind of fervor. Asia, Africa, India, other places like that. They're on fire for God. He says, well, we've lost a lot of that in American Christian life. We need to return to it. In a social media transfixed society, youth actually took time to take God seriously. I got to say that again. In a social media transfixed society, these young people took God seriously. That is so uncommon in this generation, that is so obsessed with lascivious entertainment and demonic video games. Of course this got people's attention. This was abnormal. This is not the way kids act today. It's not what they do. We think of this generation in terms of suicide statistics, how proficient they are in video games, whether or not they're an internet influencer star. Well, yes, we could use a lot more revivals. And I'd like to see some of the Christian leaders of the country just keep your hands off of it. Just let it be what it is. Let the kids do what they do. Let the young people worship God the way they want to worship. Put away your cell phones. Put away your cameras. You don't have to capture it. You don't have to make something of it that it isn't. Just let it be what it is. Let the fire flame. Not just in Asbury. How about it? Seeing something like this happen in the feel-good, seeker-friendly mega churches of today, huh? How about letting this fire burn in the campuses of other Christian colleges and seminaries, especially where it can be tempered with deep theology and evangelistic enthusiasm? And the next time this happens, I think you knew I'd get to this sooner or later. Let it include real deliverance, serious deliverance. I think most of these students at Asbury only know deliverance as they see it on YouTube. That's not bad necessarily, but they've maybe not experienced it personally in their lives as a normalized part of Christianity. I wish that would be the case. Because if they can incorporate deliverance with revival, that will ensure that the participants do more than feel spiritually energized. These wonderful young men and women who were so sincerely seeking God with all their hearts might also get free from generational curses they didn't know they have and demons they didn't realize inhabited them. Jen, thank you for the gift of $4.99. Stephanie says, what's sad is humanity attempting to reason everything versus discernment. We as believers need it. Andre, thank you so much. To all of you and your friends for your prayers and advice, God bless you, dear ones. David, oh, it brings up the Mortal Kombat game, absolutely. And Craig says media has become addictive for youth today, and that's the whole point. This is the antidote. Simple, fervor for God, plain, unvarnished, sincere. These are young people. Their emotions are still developing. Those students don't have all of their cognitive skills yet. Who knows if everything went the best that it could have gone? But you know, God knows their hearts, seeking Him sincerely, whether it was for a second work or a third work or fourth work of grace. They were drawing closer to the Lord. That's a good thing. We need more of it. But not in an isolated small-town college campus. And I'm putting it down because it was a small town and so on, but how about this happening in some major Christian universities in larger cities where the societal impact can be more powerful? Those are my thoughts. I'd be interested in knowing what you think. go ahead and post it. I'm going to be reading the chats later. I haven't had too many of you comment specifically on what I've said tonight, but thank you for doing so. And let's pray for those students that a deep, genuine work of God will continue in their hearts, and that other places will see the reality of a real regenerative movement of the Holy Spirit that gets this country back where it belongs. And one of the best things you can do to really get your thinking straight about the need for serious revival through deliverance is to enroll in Bob Larson University. Why don't you at least check it out? Just go to boblarsonuniversity.org. Click down below. Go there. See what we have to offer you to educate you, to prepare you for life or for ministry if that's what you want. And thank you for going to boblarson.org, clicking on donate if you've appreciated tonight's show and appreciated this teaching and perspective. And also, you can give. Just text the word give to 833-361-4711. And I have a message for all the students, anybody who was part of the Asbury Awakening. You can not only experience the fervor of an emotional communication with the Lord, but you can go deeper and understand the truth of breaking away from the bondages of Satan to get free, stay free, and live free.
Your financial support and prayers make it possible for us to bring hope for the hurting and freedom to those in spiritual bondage. For the latest information regarding ministry outreaches, go to boblarson.org or call 303-980-1511.